So I am curious about where do you get your information about spirituality? Maybe I'll put it that way very broadly. Um, because, for most of my life, I've been interested in the spiritual path, various spiritual paths. And just like most people, I have studied um, different spiritual books and scriptures and non-scripture books, obviously that um, maybe just from individuals. And the question is, um, which of those sources of getting information about the spiritual world um, is most credible to oneself? And each of us will describe it differently, right? Which is why I'm really curious um, what your sources are and how you come to trust in those sources. And in fact, before I go on, I really welcome you to um, comment below, chat below on anything that's already coming to you. So again, the question is, where do you get information about spirituality? And how do you come to trust? Why do you trust those sources, those sources of information? And by the way, it's not just books, right? It could be books, your own experiences, certain people that you know that have told you certain things, religion, um, organizations, yeah, anything, your family, tradition. Those are all different ways to get information about the spiritual world or spirituality. And how do you, which sources do you use and do you trust? And anything you want to say about why those sources are trustworthy to you? And this is not a discussion. Well, yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing your comments, whatever you want to share, or you can keep it to yourself if you want. Um, this is not the place to say, well, so and so said that, and I think those are not trustworthy because 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 it's hard for anybody to explain. It's explain fully why one has trust in these particular sources. There's too much of life experience that cannot be placed into a comment, let alone 100 comments. So, but I'm just really curious. Like I'm in the process of putting together the sources that I trust and doing a more comprehensive study of those sources to gather my philosophy. And yeah, so it's an ongoing work, and I'm sure it's going to happen perhaps for years to come. So this is just a beginning, and I'd love to know if anything that you already want to share. So feel free to comment below before we move on. All right. So thanks to the some of you who are live with me here in this while I'm recording this and chatting your thoughts below. Um, yeah. Anyway, if when I upload the recording, you can copy paste it to the comments section if you want to share it publicly. Okay, so I'll go ahead and share what my sources are, and if you resonate with any of these, please comment below, or if you have anything to add, I'd love to see your comments. So, um, I guess growing up, I was, in Taiwan, and the sources of spirituality were temples and ancestor altars in the home, which were common in at least the older generation's homes. And then television, obviously, they had their myths were told as stories in television and stuff like that. And those were all interesting and like kind of mysterious, and like, yeah, as a kid it's easy to believe that, oh, if you pray for certain things and certain spirits and ghosts and all that stuff, right? It's easy. And as I grew older, I became more skeptical of skeptical about those things. And it's like, oh, maybe not, you know. But like reincarnation was like deep in my childhood because that was part of the culture and belief system. Different deities and like different deities would bless for certain reasons. And anyway, moved to our family immigrated to the United States from Taiwan, and in Southern California, there was the primary religious movements were evangelical. Well, at least that's what I encountered, evangelical Christianity. So Billy Graham crusades and stuff like that. So my sources became the Bible, very simple, the Bible, and I got converted as in junior high, and I love the Bible, love it. It's so much great, inspiring, and yeah, changed my life for sure. Particularly New Testament, but the Old Testament had some interesting stories there too. Um, but it was always like with the Bible and with Christianity, it was always like, I really want to believe, like, I really hope I believe properly so I don't go to hell. Like it was always a battle. It was always a battle. It was never like, I, I definitely believe. Like it was always like, okay, let's look for evidence, apologetics. Let's try to find evidence of God's creation and in God's creation and in miracles and things like to really just bolster our faith. Like we always had to try to bolster our faith. And so to me, it was always, at least the groups that I work with, um, always try to bolster our own faith. But I always felt like the assumption was it's not really real, right? Like we always have to keep adding to believe our doctrines. And I was really grateful. At some point, I came across um, Betty Eadie's near-death experience. It was a popular in Barnes and Noble or whatever, Embraced by the Light. It was on Oprah, and so it was really popular at that time. And I was like, oh, near-death experiences. Never heard of it. Wow, this person died and came back and like told these stories. Like now that's felt somehow felt more believable than reading the Old and New Testaments because this is a person and swears by the truth of her story, right? And television, obviously, Oprah, obviously makes it credible to my junior high school mind. And so I was like near death experiences. I didn't even know this was a thing. So that got me going into NDEs, near death experiences, Raymond Moody's Life After Life, and all that literature. I just couldn't stop reading near death experience. I'm like, these people are telling, these people don't know each other, and they're telling stories about what happened when they died and they saw themselves above their bodies, and then they traveled into this realm and came back. And I'm like, they're either all liars, they're all hallucinating, or some of them are telling the truth of what they saw. Now, again, they could be hallucinations, they could be uh, trying to sell books, right? There could be lying and making up a story and selling books. But I've read thousands of them now since I was a teenager. I've now read thousands of them and watched many of the thousands actually came from YouTube videos now because there's so many of them. And so it's really hard. It's impossible now for me to discredit and discount all of the thousands. It's like everybody is lying. Everybody is either lying or hallucinating. There's some material explanation for near-death experiences. There, the tunnel, the light is really just the operating room, lamp shining on the person's face. And I mean, I've read everything. I've read everything about all the debunkings and all that. It's impossible now at this like this body's mind system can no longer discount the thousands I've read as being all hallucinations or lies, or selling book stories. Some of them are told with such believability, with such honesty that, especially with YouTube videos now, you can see their faces and everything. Anyway, so that got me really believing. Like this was, starting my young adulthood, reading all these. I'm like, I really believe. It's not just trying to believe anymore. I actually do believe. Like I'm 110% there, 110% there in terms of the survival of consciousness and what comes afterwards. There's a picture being put together by these thousands into a map, right? It's like everyone's like feeling like everyone traveling to an unknown land, and everyone brings back a little bit of the story of, okay, the land looks like this, and then someone else says, no, there's another piece of the land that looks like that, and then thousands of pictures coming together into a map that, like, okay, there's some convergence here. Anyway, I then came across in around 2012, I came across mediumistic literature. I don't know if any of you have ever studied medium communications, but it was what was a professor from University of Arizona? Um, he wrote the after. Anyway, I'm forgetting the books now. It's been over a decade, and there are books written by people who purport to be channeling spirits, and they talk about the afterlife and what it's like over there. And you read one, you're like, okay, probably some crazy person, right? Like probably they're very creative. Like they can speak in, in a different voice when they're in channeling, and they can write differently when they're channeling spirit than when they write normally. And it's very cool. It's very cool to see. And maybe they have some unique human artistic gift to be dramatic like that. Okay. But then you read a second one, and then you read a third one, and then you read about the stories of these people who, they're many of them were skeptics. Many of them were like, this, well, I don't know how this is happening. I'm not trying to make this happen. Or they are in a trance and they speak some things, and then later on they're confirmed, verified, if they're speaking about things that can be verified. And you hear about these stories of these people who are like being dragged kicking and screaming into this career, or this, not career, but these efforts. Many of them didn't make any money from these communications, and they just get really compelling after a while. And so, having read dozens of mediumistic literature and the stories about these people, it became, again, impossible for this body mind system to deny that there's something there. And especially when these literature, many of them, these authors didn't know each other because they're from different time periods and different parts of the world. And they are starting to tell the same story about the afterlife, or like the non-physical, we can't see this in our bodies type of existence. So, and it became so compelling that I actually reached out to one of the authors who put together. There are two authors that put together the study. These are two very scholarly gentlemen who put together the study of over 150 years of mediumistic literature. One of them is called Michael Tim, and the other one's called Stafford Beatty. And I reached out to both of them. And Michael Tim, I was able to visit him in person about maybe almost 10 years ago now. And then Stafford Beatty, I kind of became friends with and ended up recording the audiobook of his book that I liked the most, called The Afterlife Unveiled, which is a study of mediumistic literature across 100 plus years. And yeah, so if you look up Stafford Beatty, The Afterlife Unveiled, and look up the audiobook, recorded by George Kao. Okay. So that's very interesting, right? So anyway, now finally I'm going to conclude this now. With AI, now with the latest AI models, I'm like a kid in a candy store, except it's healthy candy, hopefully. And I'm able to like use AI to research and pull together the mediumistic literature, which is not modern. It's like goes back to the 1800s or even earlier, because AI has trained on all the internet's information, right? Anyway, so I finally put together, after having multiple AIs critique each other and draw together the best sources. So long story short, okay, or long story long, I should say, the sources that are most compelling to me now at this point in my life, and obviously may change, are the mediumistic literature and the near-death experiences. The near-death experiences a little bit less so because people are trying to sell books. Most of the YouTube videos you watch on the NDEs now is like, okay, to get my book, it's like, okay, I, part of what you're saying, I'm sure, is you believe it, but you're also trying to sell books. So I'm not so sure about that. So mediumistic literature, though, are from most of the people weren't trying to sell books. They weren't trying to. A lot of them were skeptics, dragged kicking and screaming into doing this stuff. So that to me it feels more credible. Than modern NDEs. But modern NDEs, where I can watch them on YouTube and watch their facial expressions and whatever I can tell in terms of when someone's being honest, that also lends some to the picture of what they're saying is the afterlife. Anyway, so AI has helped me to put together um my the article that I just literally finished um, putting together right before this session, and I'm going to share it with you in the comments below. And I'm sharing with you. Yeah, I think I'm going to share the Google Doc with you, but I also published it as a Substack post on my new Substack about spiritual things. And the Google Doc, the reason I'm sharing the Google Doc is because some of you may want to add comments to it. And you can, if you don't know how to comment on Google Doc, you can search on YouTube how to add comments to Google Doc, and mine allows comments. So if you want to add comments, anything you want to add, anything you want to question, anything you want to give feedback on, I'm very open to this. I feel like even though I'm just about turning 50, aging myself here. Some of you probably didn't know my age. I feel like I'm just beginning. Like I feel like I'm just beginning my spiritual life. I feel like but I feel like that's been true. It's like, yeah. So this is like the next phase of my spiritual life where I'm doing more serious study, you might say, and putting together um with the like I feel like now I have the help of these brilliant assistants that can put together a lot more information than I can, previously. And so now with these brilliant assistants, I can do more of a systematic, comprehensive study that I couldn't do before. So that's why I'm so excited about this. And so I'm going to bring you along the journey. And I look forward to your feedback, your contribution, your questions, your yeah, critiques, anything that can uh, help me, and maybe it'll help you as well to better understand what we believe and why we believe it. So there it is. That's all. And now I look forward to your comments. So I also want to say that maybe for a lot of people, obviously something like 40% of the world, right, don't believe that there's an afterlife. Maybe it's less than that. I don't know. But I don't think that's a problem either. And I'll say why. I think as I've studied more of what seems to me to be the afterlife, like one theme keeps coming through, which is yes, there's the afterlife. Don't be like, oh, I want to get there as soon as fast possible, right? The point is to live this life, and to live this life making the best choices that we can, as if, well, whether, if you believe, then it's as if there's an afterlife. But if you don't believe, as if there isn't an afterlife, you know. And I think that's really powerful because there's uh there's also this insight that comes from the afterlife literature that it's okay if people don't believe, because then it makes this game much more real, much more like, I better play it well. I better live this life really well, because it's not like I have infinite tries, right? For the people who are atheists. So I really respect that. And I'm like, in some ways, knowing about the afterlife is kind of like a cheat code, kind of cheating. I'm like, oh, I have infinite tries, or it's going to be fine. It doesn't matter what I do here. It's going to be fine. Really, it's going to be fine. So we don't take the decisions and the experiences here as seriously. Maybe some people, anyway. Some of us may take it more seriously because we know the ripple effect, the repercussions that happen now and later, kind of thing. Anyway, long story short, I don't. I no longer try to convince people personally, because I realize there's power to both atheism and non-atheism. There's a lot of helpfulness to living a life well. That's number one. Number two is that I've I my belief helps me. And Amy had asked about, oh, how does that inform your practice? How does that inform how you live? My beliefs have led me to basically two mantras. Like if I were to say two central mantras in my life: work lightly and rest deeply. Thumbs up. Thanks, Zoom. Work lightly and rest deeply. And I think prior to having a more developed belief about the afterlife, it was hard for me to do that because I took everything so seriously. Like, and growing up in school, like, oh, you got to get good grades. Okay. Now you got to make after school. Now you got to make money, and now everything's so serious. And for me, it was coming to having a belief made me relax deeply. The rest deeply part was like, okay, now I can rest deeply. Rest deeply, not because, right now my health is good, because my health can change at any time. Rest deeply, not because, I have a partner, life partner that can support me, because who knows what might happen to anybody at any time, right? Like rest deeply, not because I live in a society that's going to support me if something goes, oh, that can change anytime, right? Like rest deeply because of my of because of God. You could, it's like that's the ultimate foundation for me. It's like that is unshakable, like the everlasting arms, like that's unshakable. Like for me to find a philosophical foundation that is unshakable was so important for me to be able to rest deeply. And by resting deeply, I mean philosophically, psychologically, emotionally, worldview wise, like rest in the deepest way possible, which then allows me to work lightly, to say, well, then I'm going to try to make the most positive difference that I can without taking it so seriously, or without thinking it's all up to me, rather. And so, anyway, so that's why I love my belief so much. And that's what I hope for everybody, is not that they take on my beliefs or that they even take on any belief. What I hope for everybody is truly that everyone finds a way to rest deeply so that one can work lightly, and so that one can live the best life possible here, regardless of whether there is something afterwards. So I hope that makes sense.